Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Burchfield Penney Art Center. My name is John Smigelski, and I'm our Public Programs Manager. On behalf of the center, I'd like to welcome you to the event this evening and thank you for choosing to spend some time with us. Buffalo has a richly diverse art scene, and by offering these digital events, in addition to our Second Fridays and Burchfield Connects live events, we hope to continue connecting with the community and celebrating our shared love of art of all disciplines. Tonight, we'll be featuring a roundtable discussion based on our current exhibition, Shelter by Lisa Carr. We'll be joined by representatives from Jericho Road, Journey's End, Stich Buffalo, the Priscilla Project, the Anne Frank Project, and the International Institute. Burchfield Penney Art Center is committed to social distancing. We recognize the need to come together during these times, but also want to do our part to continue to flatten the curve. The program this evening is presented in part due to the generous support of the Cullen Foundation. On behalf of the Burchfield, I want to thank you again for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy. And with that, I'm going to turn things over to Lisa, and I will jump back in when we start the Q&A.
Thank you, John, and good evening, everyone. And what a thrill to have these stellar organizations gathered all together for tonight's Shelter Roundtable discussion. It's very exciting. Big thanks to John Smigelski and all of the folks at the Burchfield Penney Art Center for making tonight possible. So what's it all about this evening? Here's a little background. The Shelter Project began in 2017 with a New Yorker article by Jake Halpern called The Underground Railroad for Refugees. Halpern described the Vive shelter in Buffalo, and I had never heard of it. So I called my sister Sue, who's a nurse in Buffalo, and she described her own volunteer work with Vive and with the Priscilla Project. So that was my first introduction to refugee organizations in Buffalo. And my husband David and I then began donating music and performance workshops every spring during family visits to Buffalo. And through this initial affiliation with Jericho Road and their support organizations, the Shelter Project was born. And speaking as a Buffalo gal, what can I say? There are no other cities quite like Buffalo. I'm sure you would all agree with me, but there are cities and communities like Buffalo who have organizations and staff in place that can receive, support, and resettle displaced people and their families. At this point in time, there may not be a more meaningful and important job than that. There's a very good chance that in the near future, many, many more of us will be displaced due to escalating acts of terrorism, but also due to climate disruption, toxic soil, food shortages, lack of affordable housing, and other dire scenarios. Tonight's roundtable is an opportunity for everybody to become more informed, to get involved, to create a deeper engagement with your community, no matter where you live, in Buffalo or some other city or town, United States or anywhere on the planet. We're all connected. We may speak in different tongues and come from different beautifully diverse cultures, but we all speak the human language, the language of humanity and altruism. In fact, thanks to evolution and natural selection, we're all hardwired to help each other survive. It's all in here. Speaking strictly for myself, if not for the help and support of all these organizations here tonight and the project support of the Burchfield Penney, I couldn't have realized my shelter installation, which actually is on exhibit right now at the Burchfield Penney until June 27th. If you haven't gone yet, I hope you will soon. But in the meantime, let's get started with tonight's event. We're going to begin by inviting all of the organizations to introduce themselves to you, and then we'll open up our discussion to questions and dialogue, followed by a live Q&A with everybody. John will be our moderator this evening, and I want to just thank you for coming, and take it away, John.
Hi, so we're gonna kind of go around the Zoom table, as it were, and have some of these wonderful people introduce themselves and the work that they're doing. So we are gonna start out with Jericho Road. So I don't know who wants to take the lead on that one first.
Yep, so I'll go first. My name is Mary
Beautiful.
Schaefer. I am the Marketing and Communications Manager for Jericho Road. And I'm also here with my colleague Mustafa Ali, who is the program coordinator for one of our programs, the Hope Refugee Drop-In Center. And that program participated in the shelter exhibit with Lisa. So he's going to talk about some of our programs, and I'm going to talk about some of our programs also. So just as background information about Jericho Road, there's kind of 3 sections of what we do. So there's medical care, there's our community programs, of which there are 6-ish, and then global health. So of the first 2, we serve a lot of refugees and immigrants, but we're also open to all sorts of people, especially our health centers. Anybody can come for healthcare to Jericho Road. But some of our programs are specifically for refugees and immigrants, and then some of them are open to anyone. So I'll talk for just a second about our medical programs, and then we'll talk more about our community programs, because that's really what we're discussing tonight. So we have 3, soon to be 4 health center locations in Buffalo, and we are a federally qualified health center, which basically means we serve anybody, regardless of insurance status, regardless of ability to pay. And actually, one of our health center locations, which is on the west side of Buffalo, it's the first health center location that we ever had back in 1997 when we opened. We actually shared that building with Journey's End at the time. They're not in that building anymore. We kind of took over the entire building eventually. But that's one of the ways that Jericho Road ended up getting so integrated into the refugee community and serving so many refugees, is because Journey's End was there, and they would refer their patients or their clients to Jericho Road for healthcare. So that's just kind of an interesting tidbit about how all of these agencies kind of are interconnected. And one unique aspect of our healthcare programs and services is that we do have an in-house interpreter team. So 57% of our patients are best served in a language other than English. And our interpreter team speaks, I think it's something like over 25 different languages. They are originally from all over the world. Many of them are former refugees themselves. And that is part of Jericho Road's model. And I think probably part of the model of some of the other organizations on this call, is to hire from within the communities we serve, because we found that that's the best way to do the work. So I'll leave aside the other tons of information about our healthcare facilities and talk about our program. So Lisa had mentioned that when she first got interested in the work of working with refugees and how it is to experience life as a refugee in Buffalo, it was through connections with the Priscilla Project and also with Vive. And both of those are programs that fall under the Jericho Road umbrella. There are some other programs that do as well, but they weren't involved with this exhibit, so I'm not really going to talk about them. But I'll give you an overview of Priscilla Project and an overview of Vive, and then Mustafa will give an overview of the Hope Refugee Drop-In Center, which also participated. So Priscilla Project is a maternal health program for at-risk, socially isolated pregnant women. So it originally started to support refugees specifically, but now it's open to any woman who needs it and who qualifies. We have a whole team of doulas and community health workers on staff, and they work with mothers to reach a healthy birth weight for their babies, have a full-term pregnancy, and kind of get them socially connected. So usually when we're not dealing with a pandemic, we try to connect as many of our clients with volunteer mentors from the community. Because as you can imagine, if you left, your country of origin and you've come to a brand new place, you don't necessarily have family connections or friend connections that can help support you when you need a ride to the doctor, or you need to talk to somebody because you're feeling anxious or you're feeling depressed. So we try to connect them with other people in the community apart from Jericho Road staff. Our doulas and our community health workers are usually language and culture matched to their clients. And again, many of them are former refugees. Some of them have also gone through the Priscilla Project themselves. Right now, everything we're doing is basically virtual, except for when our doulas actually go support women in the hospital during labor and delivery, because it's pretty hard to do that virtually. And they're also providing interpretation in the hospital, which is a pretty big deal. I can't imagine, I'm not a parent, but I still can't imagine, giving birth in a country where I don't speak the language and a doctor and a nurse is yelling instructions at me and I don't know what they're saying. And our doulas are there to help support that too. So that's Priscilla Project. And then Vive, it was actually originally its own nonprofit for many, many years until it was acquired by Jericho Road in, I believe, 2015. Vive is a shelter that assists people who wish to make a refugee claim in Canada or who are seeking asylum protection in the US by providing safety, shelter, food, legal help, and then some other programs too. So I do want to make a distinction between what a refugee is and what an asylum seeker is. And anybody else on this call who works with those populations can also jump in and help me out. But basically, a refugee is an established designation by the United Nations. So a refugee has official status from the UN before they ever come into, the country in which they're being resettled. And they go through a very lengthy vetting process, both through the UN and through the country that they're going to be resettled in. They are resettled through an agency like International Institute, like Journey's End. So that's how the refugee process works in a very small nutshell. Asylum seekers go through a completely different process. So an asylum seeker is somebody who leaves their own country due to a well-founded fear of being persecuted for reasons of race, religion, nationality, membership of a particular social group, political opinion, and then they travel to another country hoping that the government there will protect them and allow them to live there. So they have to prove before being, given any kind of status that they do have that well-founded fear of persecution before they can even have a chance of being granted asylum. That process is also very long. And basically people who come to Vive are either trying to get to Canada in order to make a claim of that kind, or they're trying to make that kind of claim in the United States. So we have legal support that helps them do that. And it basically started as because of our proximity to the Canadian border, there were already tons of people trying to come to Buffalo in order to try to get over to Canada. That still does happen, well, not so much now because the border is mostly closed. But now it's kind of a mix. For us, it's a mix of people who are coming to us short term en route to Canada, and they just need some legal support and housing before they can do that. But we do have a lot more long-term clients who can be connected with us for a year or two while they're waiting and working on their asylum claim in the United States. So I think that's it for Priscilla Project and Vive and Jericho Road in general. And then, sorry if you can hear, people like to drive very loudly on my street. I think I'm going to turn it over to Mustafa so he can talk mostly about HOPE, but also our ESL program. And were you going to talk about something else? Oh, I can't. Oh, and financial education.
Yes, thank you, Mary. My name is Mustafa Ali. I'm the program coordinator at HOPE Refugee Dropping Center. The HOPE Refugee Dropping Center is slightly different than traditional refugee resettlement agencies, and we do have some today on the panel. So where the refugee resettlement agencies are part of the program to bring individuals who have refugee status into the US and in Buffalo, HOPE Refugee does not do that. We help individuals who have already been resettled in Buffalo and help anyone that needs any help at any point. It could be someone who has been here for 6 months, 1 year, 10 years. If they are sort of looking for any guidance or trying to figure out the system, don't know what to do, how to handle things, fill out forms, schedule medical appointments. But our large majority of our clients are refugees and immigrants, but our office is really open to anyone in the community. We do have 13 staff members who are from the community who speak the languages of the refugees and immigrants. And yeah, basically we try to assist and help in any way that we can. We are under Jericho Road. That's one of the ways that Jericho Road is involved with the refugees. Apart from that, we do offer other programs that are sort of, closed due to COVID and open again when COVID is down. So it's in and out. But we do offer ESL classes. At one point, they used to be at HOPE Refugee Dropping Center at 248 West Ferry Street. And they used to be also in the homes of these individuals. But due to COVID, we had to, take precautions. And right now we do offer online classes for citizenship. The other program is financial education. Some individuals, I believe majority of refugees coming to the country, while they do go to work, unfortunately, some of them have never seen a check before or don't know how to use the banking system. This is the program that is primarily focusing on, teaching individuals what it means, how do you cash in, what is a checking account. Eventually, you are interested in buying a house. What is that process? How do you go about buying a house? So there's a lot that we do, but due to time, I'll stop there for now. I'll have, I think it's International Institute that goes next.
Yes. Thank you so much, Mustafa.
Thanks, Mustafa. Good evening, everyone. I'm Denise Behag. I'm the Director of New American Integration for the International Institute of Buffalo. I'm really happy to be here this evening, and it's really nice to see so many of our friends and colleagues on the call. I think one of the themes that you'll see and hear throughout this discussion this evening is how closely that we work together. And I know Journey's End is going to talk about what makes Buffalo a great place for refugee resettlement. And I do think that the collaborative nature of all of us working together and helping each other and collectively helping the refugee and immigrant community is really one of the forces that does make Buffalo a great place. So our agency has been in existence since 1918. We were formed as a branch of the YWCA to actually help war brides adjust. So we're the oldest refugee resettlement agency. I haven't been there the 103 years, but I have been there for 24 years. And I've been very blessed to have seen many different refugee communities come through our doors. And I think everyone on the call will also say that nothing makes us more happy than to see our clients when they have become successful and come back and tell us that they've bought homes and that their kids are now in medical school and that they've become citizens. And it's really fulfilling to see them live out their American dream and really become true neighbors in our city of good neighbors. Our mission statement is making Western New York a better place for and because of refugees and immigrants. It fits on a t-shirt, it's nice and short, and it's true. We offer many different programs at our agency, one of which is the New American Integration Program, which I'll talk about shortly, but our programs reach, as many of the other programs do, beyond just the immigrant and refugee population. We offer a interpreting and translation service, and that program serves not only individuals, but it also is in place in hospitals, courts, the police. It is a fee-based program, but by law, individuals that do not speak English are required to receive services in their own language. So it's a very important aspect and a very important program for us. We can provide interpreting and translation services in over 80 languages. We do recruit, as someone else mentioned, from the refugee and immigrant community we provide trainings and are very happy to offer those services. Another program that we provide that's very unique to us is our survivor support program. That program provides services for survivors of domestic violence, as well as survivors of human trafficking. And that can take various routes, including human trafficking for sex trafficking, drug trafficking, or labor trafficking. And we do a lot of trainings throughout the community to inform people of the types of things that they should be looking for in case they do encounter someone who is a potential survivor of trafficking. So we work a lot with the police, with hospitals to advise them and to train them on that. We have an international visitors and exchange program. This is a program that works directly with the Department of State, and we work with them to bring visitors over from other countries to do an information exchange. So it may include, several years ago when there were large refugee numbers moving throughout Europe. There were a lot of leaders from European cities coming here and talking to all of our various partners to help them determine how best to deal with the influx of refugees and see how a city like Buffalo was working with that. They also, in that department, provide a lot of training in terms of cultural awareness to schools and police and hospitals. And then finally, we have the New American Integration Program, which is my program. We offer the Refugee Resettlement Program. We are one of 4 refugee resettlement agencies in Buffalo. And I'm assuming, Jeff, you're going to talk about that, just touch on it later, or do I need to name them now? Name them? You're muted. So it's.
You would think I was a rookie at this. Yeah, I'll list them.
Perfect. I don't have to do that.
Yeah.
So stay tuned for Jeff on that. We have an integration program which helps people post-resettlement, but I do want to give a shout out to Hope Refugee Services. They help a large number of our clients, not only with the drop-in center, but a lot of the other programs they offer. We co-share a lot of different programs within the 4 agencies as well as Hope. We offer a really robust employment program that prepares, places, and follows up with clients in the workplace. We share really good relationships with other employers. The other refugee resettlement agencies also offer this program. It's very important for our clients financially as well as psychologically to hit the ground running and become employed. And we're there to support them and to upskill them once they do get some experience under their belts. Our employment program can also serve survivors of human trafficking as well as asylees that were staying at the Vive shelter. We offer a nationally recognized, and it's based on a national model, welcoming program. It's based on the Welcoming America model. That model builds bridges between the receiving community, which is the community that's already existing in Buffalo, and the refugee and immigrant community. And I think one of the things that I'm most proud of is our community empowerment program, which we work very closely with leaders of the different ethnic organizations, and we actually pay them to work with us. So examples of this would be a contract that we had with the Department of Health to do COVID outreach, where we trained and paid the different ethnic communities to do COVID outreach within their own groups, as well as census work. And we are beginning to pay them to do some of our core services under our resettlement program. So be happy later on to answer questions. And who am I turning it over to now?
We are going to be turning things over now to the Anne Frank Project.
Excellent.
All right, thanks, Denise. Hi, everyone out there. My name is Eve Everett, and I'm the Assistant Director of the Anne Frank Project at SUNY Buffalo State. And the Anne Frank Project's mission is unique. The Anne Frank Project uses the power of stories as vehicles for community building, conflict resolution, and identity exploration. Inspired by the wisdom of Anne Frank Project surfaces, develops, and shares stories stifled by oppression. And this whole project occurred because of a performance. So we're performance-based. We deal with creating stories, and we also work a lot in education. It's like the 2 worlds combined. And in 2006, when the now director, Drew Kahn, directed The Diary of Anne Frank, there wasn't just one Anne Frank, there were 2. It was the traditional Jewish family, Anne Frank, and then also a Rwandan Anne Frank, who was named Anana. And that was to represent the genocide, the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda, to show that since never again, there were lots of genocides happening, lots of massacres happening in the world. And how many diaries did we lose? And so we look at Anne Frank, we nod to her and we say, how wonderful is it that we need not wait a single moment before improving the world? And we do that through sharing our stories like she did. And so that play sparked so much interest on campus because it also represented our student body, which is wonderfully diverse. and those stories that ought to be told in order to improve the world. And that evolved into a social justice festival, an annual event that happens every single year on campus. It's been 13 years going. And also we have local, national, and international initiatives where locally we work in the Buffalo Public Schools very often doing teacher training with story-based learning, which is, in a nutshell, moving information from the head into your body so you can share stories, because using our body is a universal language. Whether you're speaking Swahili or English, we can understand what our bodies are expressing. So it levels the playing field and allows a healing place for people to come together and share stories. So we have a series that we take people through and train them in story-based learning to use as a vehicle in the classroom to build curriculum or build culture. We also work nationally. We have the Social Justice Festival that happens every year, and we bring in people from all over the country, also the world. And internationally, we have teaching and learning sites in Rwanda, Kenya, and Switzerland. And we have a study away program through Buffalo State to Rwanda right now, soon to be Kenya, we hope. And so we have some wonderful international partners, and we work regularly with different organizations in Buffalo, but quite often in the Buffalo Public Schools, where we work with refugee students year-round, teaching them how to tell their stories. And we are honored to be a part of that process, because they find the common themes, that although we're from all over the place and we have lots of different backgrounds, different stories, we still feel the same way about certain issues, and we can learn how to share them in a unique and respectful way. So a little bit more about the Anne Frank Project. We also have a really cool project called the Sophia's Legacy Project, and that is an educational program that teaches the lessons behind the Holocaust and genocide education. So, and that is inspired by our dear friend and someone who helped co-found the Anne Frank Project, Sophia Veffer, who is a Holocaust survivor, and she speaks every year at the Anne Frank Project, and she is a refugee. So she is extremely passionate about speaking with younger refugees in Buffalo Public Schools. So we put that together as much as possible. I want to hand it over to our phenomenal intern, Jada Hutchinson, who's working right now at Buffalo State, just to share a little insight about how she's been involved with us.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Jada. I'm a senior at Buffalo State. My major is psychology with a minor in creative studies, and I'm an intern at the Anne Frank Project. So I actually got involved with the Anne Frank Project my freshman year of college. Right now I'm a senior. So one of my professors required students to go to different events on campus for extra credit. And so I decided to go to an Anne Frank Project for their festival, as Eve mentioned. And I loved it. I absolutely go every single year. I really loved everything that was going on, all the events. So I go every single year, and I actually went to the one this year, and I got offered an internship. So there's two roles that I play as an intern. So first, it's about story-based learning. So story-based learning is basically, I'm learning how to facilitate and learn how to learning how to facilitate and show different groups, as Eve mentioned, like in public schools and things like that, how to honor stories. Sorry, I'm a little bit nervous. So we actually use the story of Anne Frank as a catalyst to help people understand that, your stories are important and it's important to share. And also, I am actually a part of the Social Justice Committee at my campus. The president of the college, she has a subcommittee for social justice, and I'm basically one of the co-chairs in the student voice to help ensure that the student voice is being portrayed, because we have different professionals and faculty that work on the committee. So I'm one of the 3 student voices, basically. And what we do is we work with community partnerships, and we so actually, I help research and explore national efforts and put those best efforts basically into practice so that we can help serve all students. That diversity, we want to include diversity and equity. We also we try to find out different things we can use in the community in order to basically build a bridge between the community and the institute. A lot of people come from different places, and so we basically will, really try to make the institute more be able to basically, I can't think of the word, but basically be a light towards all different types of people from different cultures, different ethnicities, things like that. So that's a little bit about my involvement with the Anne Frank Project, and thank you guys for having me tonight.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Jada. We're going to turn things over now to Stich Buffalo.
Hi, my name is Sherry Vogelbaum, and I am the Operations and Development Manager at Stich Buffalo. I am a recent transplant to Buffalo myself. I came 5 years ago, and part of what attracted my husband and I to Buffalo was the diversity, the racial, the cultural, the socioeconomic diversity, all the grassroots creative energy and cultural energy that was going on. So in 2019, when the position came open, I was over the moon. So Stich Buffalo was founded in 2014 with the simple desire to gather and create. Our founder, Dawn Hogue, she was inspired by the women that she saw in the streets, that when she would travel through the West Side to Buff State, she would, see their beautiful clothes and the way that they adorned themselves. And, she wanted to connect with them through the language of textiles. And so she started, I think Stich Buffalo started in a church basement, as far as I know. It came to our current location in 2018, at 2017, sorry, at 1215 Niagara Street. And the heart and soul of Stich Buffalo is our refugee women's workshop. And let me see, basically, the Refugee Women's Workshop is an inclusive space for the refugee immigrant women to create handcrafted goods and find economic empowerment. So this provides them with, Stich Buffalo provides all of our participants with materials and tools and instruction at no charge. And if they, the women that make these things, the beautiful handcrafted goods that they create, like woven textiles and embroidered clothing and home accessories, they make these things, and then if they want to sell it, then Stich Buffalo sells that for them and provides their compensation on a consignment basis. And so it's a way for the women to provide, to find economic empowerment through the creative process. That is, it's just a really wonderful way to for self-actualization, for cross-cultural interaction, and it provides a supportive network for the women, and it improves their lives through, of course, the financial opportunities. And so I couldn't be prouder of all the work that goes on at Stich Buffalo by the women and by the participants. And, it's just a very, it's a happy place. People who come into Stich Buffalo, they feel the joy, they feel the life, they feel the spirit. And so it really helps to not only improve the lives of our refugee and immigrant community, it enhances the culture of Buffalo. That is just wonderful because, these women bring their unique perspective, on a global textile tradition. And that's really wonderful, and Buffalo's better for it.
Can I jump in just for a minute? Sherry, that's so beautiful. And I also want to plug a little something because the third shelter-oriented event is going to be in April. There's going to be a Stich Buffalo workshop. And Sherry and Dawn are going to create a workshop, and Burchfield Penney has agreed to list it on their site. So you'll be hearing about this workshop in April. And if you want to, you can take it. It's going to be really great. So I just wanted to make sure that I got that plug in, Cheryl.
Thank you.
Okay, that was wonderful, and I'm going to disappear again.
And so for our last set of introductions for this panel, I'm going to turn things over to Jeff and Journey's End.
Hi, thank you, John, and welcome everybody. I'm here with my partner, Bulo Emmanuel. He runs one of our programs at the agency called the Navigator program, trying to bring together different cultures and organizations together to resolve current issues within the refugee population. So we're, as an agency, we're about 35 years old. We just had I think our 31st anniversary last week. And well, I know we did on the 13th. So we, at the core of our business, we're a resettlement agency for sure. And everything revolves around resettlement, of course. If we don't have people here, our programs don't get filled and we don't serve people. So we have around 65 staff members. We also have a similar model to Jericho Road that around 50% of our employees are current or previous refugees. Out of the whole agency, I think there's like 38 languages spoken with all the staff members. So we have a lot of wraparound services. You know, as you could hear so far, there's a lot of needs that people have once they arrive here for adjusting to the community. And that's what it's all about for all of us, is introducing people to our community and helping them to adjust with their families. So we do that by some of the same programs as Denise mentioned, an employment program. We also have one of the bigger immigration programs in Buffalo for sure, and even across the state. We have offices from here to Albany. And one of our offices, or one of our attorneys, sits at B-Bay full-time. So we have a refugee school impact program that's made up of 5 individuals that are specifically hired with language abilities to reflect the same languages in the schools. So our coaches will sometimes go in and sit right next to students that are having difficulty usually because of a language challenge. So they'll sit right next to them to support them and work with the teacher and the student one-on-one, as well as they were very active over this last year with the pandemic and helping the families adjust to the technical needs that they would need for their children to attend school. In fact, next week, we have a camp for those students where 2 days, the first 2 days are parents included, where we're teaching them how to help their kids enter the classroom and how to use all the applications the schools are using. And then the next couple of days of that week will be working on mathematics skills. And so that's always an exciting week for the kids. We have a childcare program that we train individuals from the refugee community to start their own business, doing childcare in their homes. So there are more culturally sensitive daycare programs available to refugees in the city. We also have multiple ESL classes, as well as high school equivalency classes. under a partnership with Erie Community College, we are doing the same thing in our classes to get people ready for college. And we also run a citizenship class. We have an urban farm right behind our building around Main and Jewett. That's a wonderful program. It's teaching refugees how to not only grow but sell and have their own mini businesses. So that's always a lot of fun. It's a great agency event when, you know, some of us can walk outside and put our sneakers on and, you know, grab a shovel and work in the garden, get our hands dirty. We also have a women's empowerment group, and I guess that's self-explanatory somewhat. We know that, you know, the needs of refugee women are different than men in some cases, and so it's kind of a little support group for each other to be able to get out of the house and come and have coffee or tea with their friends or meet new friends from other communities. And I guess last, and I'm going to plug this a little bit because I think it's a really cool event throughout the year that we run. It's, as far as I understand, it's the only refugee-focused movie series, or is that what we're calling movie series in the country? So this year it's actually free for everybody. Because of the pandemic, we're doing it remotely for everybody. And so these films typically are focused on refugees at some stage of the process. It's often directed by refugees or filmed by refugees. There's many layers to it. We're really fortunate this year so far, every movie, and when there's one happening as we speak, we've been able to have the directors and producers there for the film and afterwards for discussion about their film. So I encourage everybody to check out that at our website, especially for this year. It's free, and honestly, they're just super well made movies. They have a great message. I think they represent very well so many characteristics of the people that we serve, anywhere from the trauma that we're seeing left over from their life before coming to the United States, or their successes before and after they arrive at the United States. So it's a wonderful film series. And I guess I'll leave it at that.
Fantastic. And then Buell, did you want to speak on anything?
No, actually, I think Jeff covered most of it. Maybe I will just share when we get to a open conversation through the questions.
Beautiful. And actually, it's perfect timing because we're going to kind of transition into that right now. So the first question I have, I'm gonna pose to Jeff and you as well. But to any other members of the panel, if you want to chime in with your thoughts, please feel free to do so. So the first question I'm going to pose is, who comes to Buffalo and why Buffalo?
Okay, well, thank you. That's a very interesting question. I guess there's a couple different ways to look at it. So Buffalo as a welcoming city, we'll look at first. We have an established numerous populations of established refugee groups in our city. And from that perspective, you know, that's a mandatory resource that we have in place for us to even accept more people from a community. I think back in the day when we were organized as an agency, the big appeal was certainly the low cost of living in Buffalo. The housing stock was high and cheap for a long time until recently. And the school systems have been relatively quick to learn how to approach serving our students. I think a lot of people in this call are part of that process as well, giving feedback to the school systems. So, and New York State, I have to say, is probably included in that list of supportive states and government organizations. They've been wonderful through this, the last 4 years, especially, and the pandemic. They've been very flexible and share a lot of information with all of us to get out to the communities. So that's kind of the basics of why Buffalo that I'm aware of anyways. I think the other side of the story would be, do they really have a choice to come to Buffalo? Would someone choose to come to Buffalo, right? I mean, I think some of us, or most of us in this call, are natives of Buffalo. So we probably have, a lot to say about that, why people would want to come here. And but the reality is that once someone escapes their country of origin and settles out into another country, they don't have status at that point. They may find a camp to live in that country, and there's United Nations organizations, as well as the larger organizations that oversee our work, do rides through the camps and screen people and take down all their information, their application, assist with getting all their medical needs, the vaccinations taken care of before they travel. But that process in itself is a minimum of 2 years. And I think that's even rare to find it happen so quickly. We see people that applied for refugee status just to get out of a camp, 25 years ago, 30 years ago. They may have been living in that camp for that long. So when they do finally get their application accepted, they actually don't have a choice of what country they're going to, unless they have family members in a specific country or city. So that's the only way, they really find out where they're going once, not exactly when their ticket's bought, but if they don't have family members located in one of the welcoming countries that exist, then they'll just get sent to whatever country they fit into, I guess. So that's there's a longer process, a longer screening process. Ideally, it would be 2 years. Very often, it's many more years beyond that. And once the screening process is done, they take loans from the government to pay for the costs of traveling to their welcoming country. So it's not a free ride. I mean, they show up here knowing that they have signed a legal agreement to repay the money that they utilize, because very often, if refugees don't have much money, so the cost of a plane ticket's impossible to pay for out of their pocket. So so they know that they have that loan to pay back when they arrive here, and of course, with the support of agencies like us, we're always giving them encouraging words about establishing credit and things like that. So so I guess that's my answer to why Buffalo.
Fantastic. Thanks so much. Does anyone else want to touch on that discussion point, or we can also just move on?
Yeah, I think I want to just piggyback and add one more thing. It is
Fabulous.
exactly what Jeff is saying in a nutshell, but it is also a very regimented process in terms of that welcoming aspect. All of us have to have conversations with our national agencies and with the federal government. This is a federal program that's been in existence since 1980. And all of those things that Jeff was talking about, cost of living, unemployment rates, what is the cost of a house, how quickly are people finding homes, what are all of the partners that you work with? So all of the people that you're seeing on this call, and all of these various partnerships, different agencies that refugees can be linked to and that new Americans can work with, even right down to religious institutions that they can be linked to, hospitals, medical care facilities. Those things are all written down and given to our national agencies and to the State Department for approval. So it's not really just up to us locally. It is a long drawn out process with different approvals as part of that. And all of these things go into whether or not it is approved.
Can I add a little question to the question? Because I remember the very first time I went to Vive, and my husband and I had our bags and bags of, equipment to make instruments with. And this was 2017. There was quite a few people coming in to Vive, clients who were arriving and also leaving, coming and going. But to me, it was a mystery. How do they get here? How are they getting here? And the other part of the question is during this past administration, the previous administration, how has the climate of people coming and going changed? If you guys could, whoever could talk about that a bit.
So I can talk about Vive, and then maybe some of the refugee resettlement agencies might want to talk about climate and how people are experiencing the different administrations. So for Vive, again, it's a different population. So whereas Jeff and Denise are working with a refugee population, which is, again, very long. I mean, both processes are long, but these are refugees are people who are oftentimes like internally displaced in their own country, or they've gone to another like neighboring country, and they're living potentially in a refugee camp, like Jeff mentioned, for like decades. Not necessarily that long, but sometimes that long. And then they get connected through the UN to receive refugee designation. And that's how, and then through that whole very long process, they get connected with, the country that's going to be welcoming them. And then funnel through like a national refugee resettlement affiliate like International Institute or Journey's End. I should probably have let you guys talk about this because you definitely know more than I do about that part of it. Vive serves a different population, so asylum seekers, which, if you watch the news and you're watching something about, a story about immigration, a lot of times they've lumped up all these people together in the same category. And there are many similarities, but it's not the same process. So an asylum seeker is either coming to a border, like is what's happening at the southern border, and are asking to be let in to claim asylum in the United States, for example, or they've already come into the United States, possibly because they're on a student visa, they're on a work visa, travel visa, somehow they're in the United States, and they're asking, now that they're in the US, for asylum. And then the process begins, either when they get to the border and they're saying, can I please have asylum? That's super reductive, but you understand. Or once they're in the US and they start applying, they go through this very long, lengthy application process to receive asylum in the US. So your question about how do asylum seekers get to Vive or into the US at all? So this is the case for the refugee resettlement agencies as well as for Vive working with asylum seekers, is that the areas of the world that people are coming from shift and change depending on what's going on geopolitically, what's going on environmentally. So sometimes it's different how people, the actual route that people take. So a couple of years ago, we had a really big influx of people at Vive coming from the Democratic Republic of Congo. And those people a lot of them flew from Africa to somewhere in South America and then just figured out how to get to the United States. And a lot of it was bus, car, and then a lot of it on foot. I actually was just watching the president's press conference today, and multiple journalists who have been at the southern border were talking about hearing from people who, I think really they were talking about unaccompanied minors, who had walked from, you know, somewhere in Latin America all the way up to the southern border. So, you know, when we talk about people like refugees, you know, it's not something that people like choose to do. Buffalo's great. You know, I love Buffalo very much, but you wouldn't choose to do that unless there were really compelling, you know, terrifying things at home that were making you leave. So that's sort of how people, I mean, I wouldn't say that's always the case of how people are getting to Vive. Some people can just, you know, they maybe just are flying into the United States directly, again, like on some sort of visa. But sometimes people are taking a very, very, very long and time consuming and energy consuming route to get to Vive. I'll let that, I mean, I could talk about, you know, how people are experiencing the different administrations, but I think maybe I would want somebody else to.
Yes, before we address that though, I would want to say that one thing you said, which is, it seems so self-explanatory, that refugees they don't choose to, I love Buffalo, but they don't choose to come to Buffalo. Refugees do not choose to leave their homes. This is something that I think is just very basic, but that sometimes we don't realize that this is one of the most basic kind of tenets of being a refugee, is that you don't want to be leaving your home, but you're forced to leave your home. I know it's basic, but let's go on. Sorry.
Fantastic. So we'll move right along to our next question, which actually I was going to send right back to Mary and Mustafa. If you could just talk a little bit about how Jericho Road and your affiliated organizations serve the refugee community in their post-resettlement phase.
So Mustafa's going to talk about this a lot because this is what he does. But I do want to say, so one of the refugee resettlement representatives can correct me if this is wrong. I think right now it's a 6-month window that the resettlement agencies have with refugees who are incoming. So, you know, if somebody comes to Hope, we usually, and it's within 6 months of them coming into the US, we usually, you know, turn them around and say, okay, you have to continue to work with your resettlement agency until your window has closed, and then you can come work with us. The resettlement agencies do also have post-resettlement programs as well, which they, you know, discussed earlier, and I'm sure they can talk about those more. So, you know, after they've completed their resettlement period of 6 months, they still may, you know, work with the agency that oh, it's 90 days, Denise says. That's so short. So that's exactly why post-resettlement programs are so important. There's no way you could come into a new country where you don't necessarily speak the language, you don't know how currency works, you don't know how to get your kids into school, you know, all the different things, and just figure that out in 90 days. So that's why the resettlement agencies also have post-resettlement programs to help them after that period. But I'm going to stop talking so Mustafa can talk about what Hope does.
Yeah, so thank you, Mary. As she mentioned earlier, we do have a history of working with refugees through Journey's End, through when we were founded as Jericho Road Family Practice. So the whole idea of working with refugees just came natural. These are individuals that live in our cities. They are going to be here, and it was sort of a natural thing to happen. But what happens is during the resettlement phase, and again, like Denise mentioned, they only have 90 days. Sometimes they do have more days, sometimes a year, depending on, you know, situation and how many refugees come in. So think about yourself going into a different country, getting a letter that you don't speak the language, you don't know what it's about. whether it's an advertisement or it's a very important letter. Like, where do you go? Of course, you go to the person that speaks your language. What if you don't have anyone that speaks your language? So that could be tricky. So we try to, again, going back to, hiring individuals from the communities, hiring caseworkers, training people, collaborating with different organizations that are in the communities. So when refugees do come to Buffalo, they have a place where, of course, they have their initial agency and caseworkers that are helping them. But what happens after they're no longer able to consistently help them? That's where we come in. It is a walk-in office where you could come utilize our office once or every single day. Again, it depends on every family, every individual is different. They all have their unique needs. And, it could be from basic things as filling out a form to, most complicated thing that you could think of for yourself. It could be a traffic ticket, it could be, a CPS case, it could be a domestic violence case. These are things that back home in other countries in Africa or in Asia, these are things that are not discussed. Domestic violence, people tolerate and move on, whereas here is a whole different situation.
Hey, Mustafa, we're having a little bit of trouble with your audio. Would you mind just, I'm not entirely sure what's up, but maybe if you leave the meeting and then rejoin, it might help.
Sure, let me try.
Okay, thank you so much.
And while Mustafa is rebooting, I do want to introduce Susan Doherty. And Sue, if you could appear for just a minute while Mustafa's dealing with Murphy's Law. Susan is actually my sister, but also she's a newly retired nurse from Children's Hospital. But she is the person who introduced me to Vive and to Priscilla Project. And she has volunteered for these organizations for quite a long time. So there might become a moment where we want to hear from Sue, especially I think maybe the next question that we ask Jericho Road might have to do with that. But so Sue, hi. Just want to introduce you. And we'll wait a moment until Mustafa returns. There he comes.
Hello.
Oh, that's better.
It seems to be better. Wonderful.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
All right. So again, talking about refugees, once they've been here, there's a lot that they have to go through. There's a lot they have to take in, and one of the barriers is the language. Some of the countries where these individuals are coming from, unfortunately, English is not the primary language, or that is not what is taught in their education system. And over here, everything is in English or Spanish. So they get notices, they don't know what it's about. That's where, individuals can come to the drop-in center, and we do have caseworkers who speak the language, understand what's going on. So, we can read out, is it an advertisement? Is it a court date that you have to go to the court? Is it your landlord sending you a notice to say you need to pay your rent? It could mean a lot of things, like enrolling children in school, healthcare application, job applications. So there's a lot that goes into what we do at the drop-in center. But if you look at all these things very carefully, somehow there are also medical related issues. So think of someone who does not have hot water and it's in the middle of the winter. Chances are that this individual may get sick, and they may end up in the emergency room. When someone does go to the emergency room and does not have health insurance, we as taxpayers eventually will have to pay for that. So we try at Jericho Road, we try to address these issues to make sure, individuals have health insurance, they know what their basic rights are. We contact the landlords, make sure, the water is up up and running, it's hot water, the furnace is working. You know, those are some of the issues we try to address. Again, I'm just going over a whole blanket of things, but again, every individual and every family have their unique challenges and unique situations. The most common one right now you can think of is unemployment. There are a lot of individuals, refugees, non-refugees, local, white, black, doesn't matter. There are a lot of individuals out there that are unemployed, and what happened is they all applied for unemployment benefits. So think about how hard it is for you as an English speaker to navigate that system and calling them and finding out when and how you will get your money every week. Think about a refugee that does not know how to use the computer or does not know what the internet is or does not even know the concept of unemployment. So those are some of the things like we try to partner with other agencies if we cannot help. So for example, Denise mentioned domestic violence. These are things that our caseworkers or at Jericho Road, we do not have someone expert in this, but we do have, you know, someone over at International Institute. So if I have someone who, you know, needs help, he's seeking help, we would call International Institute, and that's how we collaborate. Financial education, you know, we have the local banks. That's how we try to link them up. So it's basically, you know, how do we work together effectively to help refugees? And Jericho Road sort of takes the medical side of things to make sure, like, how is your health related to your other things that are happening in your life? And if those things happen, chances are that your health is going to be affected in one way or another. So we try to address those things so that someone's health, you know, does not get affected. So health, you know, health insurance is one of them. Indirectly, you know, housing is one of them. Financial stability is the other one. So child well-being is the other one. So we have worked in the past and we continue to work with other agencies because I think that's the only way we can, you know, help refugees and immigrants in Buffalo. I hope that answers or clarifies, and I'm sorry about my audio.
Not a problem. It's working fine now.
You know, Mustafa, I recognize the value of all the things that you were talking about. And I just remember a time where a recent refugee from Afghanistan, he had just gotten a new car and someone rear-ended him. And so I helped him, you know, with, you know, all he had was a copy of the police report and a dented up bumper. And so I helped him figure out, you know, who the insurance company was from the police report. And then, which is not easy anyway. And then, you know, contact that insurance company, help him to file the claim. And, you know, he was able to successfully file a claim, you know, for this minor fender bender. And, you know, he actually has a relatively good command of the language, but just, you know, navigating through those sorts of situations, you know, where there's multiple steps and so forth, you know, it's so valuable.
Yeah, so again, the example is always, you know, talk about yourself. Like for me, myself, it would be a very hard situation to be in an accident, you know, and to figure out all these processes and systems and who to call and the people involved and your agent. And then you have someone that basically drove for the first time ever in their life and they got a car and somebody hit them and they don't know what to do. So those are just, I mean, some of the examples, but there are other hard stories that we hear about that I think some of the things that we cannot share on this call, but there's some very difficult situations where, you know, if we wouldn't exist, like something worse could have happened to this family or this individual. So again, like it's the power of collaboration, you know, coming together. And again, we are not experts in everything that, you know, there are other agencies out there that have existed before us, and they're experts in doing that. So we love to refer people. Again, like International Institute is one of them. Center for Elder Law and Justice is the other one. Neighborhood Legal Services is the other one. There are other organizations that, you know, help advocate. There are immigration lawyers out there that can help. So we, you know, we love to help everyone, but unfortunately we can't help with everything, but we try to help as much as we can.
Yeah, and another thing I think that is underlying that often is overlooked is, yes, language is one of the number one barriers with the new American population, and not understanding how things work, but there's also culture that's underlying all of this. So yes, there was an accident, but if the police came to the scene of that accident, now you've got another layer of potentially being fearful of the police. Are they going to help me? Are they going to arrest me? Do I need to bribe them like I do in my country? Are they going to take my car away? I mean, there's all of these other things. So that oftentimes, especially for newer individuals, is really at the forefront of their minds very often. So agencies, the resettlement agencies, agencies like HOPE and Jericho Road, but also trusted friends, trusted neighbors, and that goes back again to this welcoming city, Buffalo being a good place. You have to be able to make those trusted relationships, so that because for new Americans, that is really an important thing. You have to find someone that you can believe and trust in and tell you, no, the police aren't going to arrest you, or don't bribe somebody, or all of those things are really important, and it takes time to learn that.
Yeah, if you don't mind me jumping in.
Yes,
no,
go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, Denise just said, like, that's the beauty of Buffalo City. Like, you have all these programs that helps people really. I mean, I remember myself when we first get here, I was resettled by Johnny Sand, but most of the programs, such as people going to hospital and having all these appointments, I wasn't speak, but at that time none of my family members speak the language, which is English. And I think Hope was there all the time, try to help people. And I can't even imagine, like, not having all this program, all these organizations, like how things would have been here like to most of our families in the communities. And that's why going back to the same question, why is Buffalo the nice city to why are people coming here to Buffalo? It's the same concept, like the hubs that people organize, this organization have really make that path people to come here. And I think when I was back home, I remember most of the people were sent to Texas, at least the place that I came from. Most people will be sent to Texas. But if you look the community in Texas, they really don't have that, like, big communities of people back home. I mean, like Africa or places where I came from. So it was very difficult to send the people there. So, like, most of the places that receive more people here in the United States from our place was either New York and Texas itself, other than like within 15 states. And Buffalo is it's very important. Like, all these people that are here and the organizations, it's just answer the first questions, like why Buffalo is why people are coming here to Buffalo.
And I want to add one more thing to what Bulo is saying. You know, it is all the organizations here, but there's other organizations that are really important to the work that we all do, and that's the ethnic communities themselves. We are really fortunate here to have a lot of the ethnic communities that have come over the years they know their communities better than we do. And they are leaders in their own right. They're survivors in their own right. And they led organizations, companies, social service agencies in their own countries worked in refugee camps, many of them, and they have started that work again here. So the Nepali Bhutanese community of Buffalo, the Nepali Bhutanese Hindu community of Buffalo, Karen Society, Iraqi American Society, Afghan American Society, many of these ethnic organizations work tirelessly as second and third jobs, many of them, to give back to their communities. And we also rely on them very heavily. And that's another thing that the State Department looks at to really support themselves. So I want to just say that, give a shout out to them. They're equally as important in this mix as we are, and we couldn't do our jobs without them.
And before we get to this next question, because with my artist brain, I'm listening with this kind of brain, and I catch these little things. And Bulo mentioned New Americans. And this is a kind of like a very delicate phrase when you think about it, that it's like a kind of a thing that's just starting to grow. And the idea of a new America, a new American, I teach an adjunct course in called cross-cultural perspective, and it's like cultural anthropology for 101 for new students, but it really has to do with kind of getting students to understand this very subtle thing. We talk about the American dream. Okay, well, that's always changing, but this idea of new Americans is a very beautiful and delicate sort of concept that has to be really it needs a lot of nurturing, basically. And so that just stuck out to me before we get to the next question.
So could I just finish with 3 points? Number one, it takes courage to come out and ask for help. I mean, refugees have been living in the refugee camps where, they cannot question where their process is. They don't have rights to do anything. So when they come here or, they ask their caseworkers, or sometimes it's very difficult for them to, I can ask questions, and like nobody is going to, I would not be in trouble for any of these questions. So that's number one. And number two is most of the cultures is decisions are made in communal basis, where either groups or families would make certain decisions for the whole community. And over here is you have every right to make your own decision. So when they come here to the dropping center, or they go to Jericho Road, and the husband is in a separate room from the wife, and the wife is like, well, I have to ask my husband. I can't just say yes to whatever the doctor is saying. And then slowly they understand, okay, this is regarding me, this is my health. Where else, where they come from, the cultures, the past experiences makes it very difficult. So it's something beautiful to see when they say, oh, okay, this is my right. I have every right to speak for myself. And the last one is, I think we also forget this other unique population. They're called the secondary migrants. These are, and Emmanuel sort of touched on this, is where refugees or immigrants would be resettled, let's say in Texas, but they have a brother or a sister or a cousin, or they have a community in Buffalo. So they move from Texas to Buffalo. So it could be where somebody just came in a week ago. It could be someone that has lived in Texas for 6 months or 1 year and decides to move to Buffalo. So that has its own unique challenges, moving from one city to another as a refugee. So there's this other population that sort of isn't talked about. And sometimes they do bring their own challenges. Sometimes they do have, I'll give you an example. They may have a CPS case, in the other state. And what happens is they would say, well, if I just move to another city, that case will be dismissed. So, and when they come here, we find out that this case still needs to be sorted out. So there's this unique population called the secondary migrants. They come because they have a family member here, or either they're looking for a job. Again, going back to, cheap housing, or community, or, just to be together with friends and family. So those are the 3 things that I wanted to mention.
That's a good point, Mustafa, about the secondary migrants. And the other group that's overlooked is the special immigrant visa group, which the SIVs, primarily the Afghan members of our community were SIVs. Those were individuals that helped our military troops, and really they have been forgotten. There were a lot of, and I don't want to get really political, but there were a lot of promises made to these individuals who took their lives and basically gave their lives over to the US government to help us, and were pretty much abandoned. And the promises that we've made to bring over numbers of them have gone unfulfilled. So there are individuals here that we're working with our government. They tend to have extremely high levels of education and English. And, you know, just like individuals that come here and don't have the language, maybe don't have a English ability or a high education level, this is the flip side of that. Folks that also struggle because they're on the other end of the spectrum. So, and are worried about what's happening in their own countries and continues to happen. So, oh, Journey's End screened an incredible documentary about SIVs. Great. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I want to kind of pivot just a little bit, and I'm going to direct the next question to Eve. So this is more geared to the Anne Frank Project, but definitely if anyone wants to chime in, please feel free to do so. So Eve, I just wanted to kind of ask, so what role does stories and performance play in building and supporting communities?
That's a really unique question, especially I'll tie it to a couple of things that were mentioned recently. The word courage came up. I think when it comes to building community and getting to know people with, especially when you're new, and when you're in a new community, it takes a lot of courage to step up and be who you are. And I'll speak specifically about the K through 12 students that we have the pleasure of working with regularly. So performance and storytelling allows a respectful, safe environment for students to look beyond the incredible pressures and challenges that are right in front of them. So yes, we may address those within our circles and our storytelling. However, and they're all the things that you're talking about, because they may be their uncles and their parents and the people that the stories that they're around regularly, and they have their own refugee journey. However, there might be 13 years old and they're looking at what they want to do, how to get through their day at school, or how to make new friends, and how to balance this culture that they have at home, the cultures that they came from, and also the new culture that they're in. So there's so many things happening in their lives, and storytelling and performance allows a language to be created within the group, especially when you're using a lot of movement, a lot of voice, not necessarily relying on language all the time, language when it's necessary. So it provides an opportunity for people to empathize with each other on a deeper level, in a different way, other than perhaps recounting what they've experienced, but maybe what their hopes and dreams are, or realizing that that they have the same drama that's happening within school. And so I think that storytelling and performance, meaning you maybe shared some stories with each other, but then giving a physical space and teaching and inviting people to share, to have the courage to stand up and build stories with each other, is empowering, and it leads to a deeper connection. It fosters really intense, trusting relationships, whether it's within, I talk about the students that we work with. We also have a lot of teachers that work within the student groups as well. So the fact that we all are sharing these stories together, all of a sudden we have a new culture within our own circle. I say circles because we really are making circles a lot when we're telling these stories and building these stories together. So I think that storytelling and performance, it just laser focuses in on empathy and courage, and it really gives new life to the fact that if you want to create a new story, you can. In fact, we can practice building that story right now. And you can use those tools for what you want to do next, whether it's focusing on, you got to study for that next math test. Okay, well, we can work on building that focus and that courage here right now. Cool. Or you want to work on, you want to go to med school? Great. Well, let's work on that. So it's all, but it starts with opening up and finding the new courage in a brand new space through the act of storytelling. And because you're relying on people you're making a space to matter again, where you've had so many times when you first arrived in this country. I can't speak from that experience, but watching students grow physically, vocally, where perhaps they've been told in a variety of ways that their culture doesn't matter or their language doesn't matter. And now all of a sudden they do, because we've fostered a new community that says, yes, you do matter and your story matters. Then all of a sudden, well, then the doors open and they're going to go after their hopes and dreams. So I feel like that's a huge reason why storytelling is, and performance, the ability to get up and share that, is incredibly important and inspiring and empowering, particularly with young people.
Thank you so much. Lisa, I kind of wanted to turn it back to you for a second so that you could introduce Susan a little bit and maybe talk with her about some of her work.
Yeah. Hey, Sue. Unfortunately, Sandra from Priscilla Project wasn't able to join us this evening, but Susan has done a lot of work with Priscilla Project over the years. And Sue, I just thought maybe as a volunteer, because we're going to kind of transition in a minute for all the viewers into how, and we'll be, I think, directing this question to Denise and the International Institute, but it's really for all of the organizations of how can a person from the community help or get involved? And my sister happens to be one of those people who has been that person. So I thought maybe Susan could talk a little bit about the work that she's done with Priscilla Project. And if you want to get as far back as Vive, but I know that Priscilla is something that is really dear to your heart. So you want to talk, and of course, we're talking about pre-COVID and then when COVID is, tripping happily down the road, what can happen. But maybe Susan can tell us about the kinds of things that she did as a volunteer.
So for about 6 years, I volunteered with the Priscilla Project. And what the Priscilla Project is women in the community who work with refugee women who are pregnant, who are newly here in the United States. And we become their friends, or they call us mentors, but really you're their friend. And you're just helping them mostly navigate the healthcare system and anything else their family might need. The whole object is to make them independent women and help them feel that they have control over their lives and their pregnancy, and to help them in whatever way you can. And I hate to use the word help. I want to say assist them like a friend would. I'm really in awe of how strong these women are who come here. And many of the women that I've become friends with have only been here for short periods of time. And it's really something to help them on their journey and their families, because it's not just the children, it's not just the women. You end up getting involved with their whole family and whatever needs they might need some assistance with. You don't really want to do, you don't want to do for them. You just want to help them do for themselves.
Sue, can you talk a little bit about the cafes?
Yeah. So a really cool thing that the Priscilla Project did was they would have they have these baby cafes, and what it is, it's women, it's I think it was once a week they would have a the baby cafe came about through a grant from the United Way, and it was to help women it was support women in breastfeeding, but it turned out to be much more than that. It became a space for women to go with their children and be with other women of their own community who had just had babies, and maybe they didn't know each other, but they could offer each other advice and support, and it was just a safe space for them. And I know that they had, the Priscilla Project did one for women who were Burmese, from Myanmar. So they were Burmese. And then also for, I want to say African women too, maybe from the Congo or from anywhere in Africa. Those are the two that I remember specifically. And they would do once a week, they would have, they would get together, they would have lunch. They would always do some type of a program with them, but it was mostly so they could get together. And is that enough? I think that's good.
Yeah, and just one more question, because you're a nurse, but you're also a volunteer. And I know that all the volunteers are not nurses.
No.
But did your nursing come into it, like in terms of, how deeply do you need to go into it with women who, as is already.
You didn't have to have any experience in that at all. You just need a willingness to open yourself up.
Mm-hmm.
Else.
Okay. Okay.
And to kind of suspend your own, I don't want to say like throw away your beliefs, but suspend of your preconceived notions about things. Mm-hmm. And I said people are all coming from another, from different areas and different things, and you have to meet them where they are. So you don't have to have any special kind, of training.
That's
the willingness to be someone's friend.
Can I jump in? Because
yeah.
So Priscilla Project is one of the programs of Jericho Road.
Yeah.
So I wanted to say thank you so much for 6 years. That is a lot. And it's also, I think that's a really good testament to you, because a lot of our mentors, but as you say, really friends, volunteers who participate in Priscilla Project, they do participate, for longer than they're officially required to, and they will get connected to another woman who's in the program because they have a great experience. And as you said, I think I'm so glad you talked about it, because I can't talk about it in the same way that a person who's actually experienced it can. But the way that you talked about it as like, this is a friendship building and a social support building program. It very much is that. There's all the health, parts of it, and the education parts of it, yes, and referring them to other agencies and that sort of thing. But at the very core of it is connecting them with their neighbors, because they don't necessarily have that when they get resettled. Of course, they don't maybe know anyone. Mm-hmm. So yeah, thank you. That was great.
Oh, thanks, Mary.
Lisa, I would like you're talking about women, and I just want to comment on the great way that Stich Buffalo supports women in the refugee community, because women are makers and creators around the world, and produce so much. And for many of these women, their lives were on hold for years, in refugee camps, and the whole process of uprooting your life and moving across the planet and trying to figure out a new life. And so the people who are these makers and creators have this resource in Stich, and a resource that fits their lives, their lives as mothers and as caretakers, and as it enables them to take their projects home and work at home while they're watching their children, and then they can bring their finished products back, and then we deal with the rest of that. And so because women refugees have their own set of unique circumstances, and I just really think that Stich is doing a great job, for the different populations that we serve, you know, the Bhutanese, the Burmese, you know, we have a new group of Somali women coming in who are, you know, just wonderful. Afghanistan, Egypt, it's, you know, the creators of all these communities, and our community is benefiting from their creativity and their spirit. And so
beautifully spoken. And I also just want to allude to something that was just kind of mentioned. Mustafa arranged 2 years ago for me to interview 18 participants who had been resettled. Actually, one or two of the narrators had not been resettled yet. They were in the process. But the thing I wanted to say is that some of them would, when they told their stories, this is not meant to be a tearjerker right now, but you know, when you talk about the amount of time some people spend in these camps, 17 years in a camp, or a child who grows up in a camp, and we don't have a context for that in most of our lives, and yet we could be standing next to someone who has this very, very different reality that they've come from, that we just kind of, we don't realize it. How can we don't know it. And yet when Susan talks about making, you know, not just like working with these women, but actually just really making these friends with these ladies, and I've met some of them, they were great. Sherry, when you brought the mother and daughter to you know, to the green screen video, and the fact that they both work with Stich Buffalo, but they also, the daughter has a little Mendy business. You know, she was just starting out with her Mendy business, and we actually decided, okay, let's go with that. And they were on the stage, and she did Mendy on her mother's hand. So it's these things that we don't think about these things, but when some of the narrators who were telling their stories would just like say these things, it would hit me like, you know, I didn't realize it, and it gets it's an experience that I will never have, but that I began to understand just a little tiny bit from their stories, Eve, you know, understanding from their stories. That's why stories are just, I always say to my students, you know, everything's a narrative, everything's a story, you just have to pull the story out. And anyway, on to the next question, John.
Thank you so much. So this next question, I'm initially going to ask Denise to speak first on it, but I really do kind of want to pose this to the whole group, just because it is a little broad, and I think you'll all have some interesting perspective on that, as Lisa kind of alluded to. But a question that I think a lot of people would be interested in knowing is, how can people in the community get involved or help? You know, either generally or specifically at the organization that you are affiliated with. So I wanted to pose that to Denise first, but everyone feel free to speak on that.
Thank you. I was really glad that Sue mentioned something. She didn't have to have any special experience, even though she did. But you really don't have to have any special experience to volunteer for our organizations. And even if you don't think you have special experience, you do. You're probably a mom, or you've worked, or you've been a neighbor. All of these things are experiences that our clients can benefit from. So the resettlement program is built on a public-private partnership, and these volunteers show the federal government that our community supports refugee resettlement. So it's very important, not only to our clients, but to us as well. Some things that, you know, aside from program-specific type of volunteering that each organization will talk about, there's things that are outside of the ordinary. Housing is really difficult for us. Every agency will tell you that is the #1 concern. We have to find houses for our clients prior to arrival, decent, affordable housing, sometimes with 1 week notice. If you know people that would make good landlords, if you have rental properties, those are things that will really help the refugee resettlement agencies. If you're an employer and you're looking for a really, really good resource for quality employees, you can work with any of our resettlement agencies and we will link you to some great employees. Church groups, scouting groups, any of those types of organized community things can turn into, let's create first aid kits for new arrivals. Let's create, I know Journey's End has a great Home Again program where people can go and set up houses to make the house into a home. There are many, many different ways. We have an in-home hello program, English as a second language in the home, specifically that was created for moms that can't get out of the house to learn English, and elderly or folks who have medical issues that prevent them from getting outside of the house, where we train volunteers to go into the houses. So I just encourage you to look at the different agencies. We all have formal volunteer programs. We'll get you trained, we'll give you the support that you need, and you will have, you will be giving, but I think as someone mentioned earlier, you will get in return too. And it's just a wonderful thing to benefit, that benefits both parties. So I encourage you, and we really appreciate all of our volunteers, interns too, high school kids, and it's something that your family can do as well. The young children can be exposed to our new American families, and it just will create much more of a cohesive and welcoming environment for the future.
Jeff, do you want to add to any of that? I know you and I talked a little bit yesterday just about the fact that you have, Journey's End has these really ambitious and beautiful, like I'm a member of the film audience, and but do you have anything that you would like to add about how people can get involved?
Yeah, I mean, Denise hit it right on the spot, and I'm sorry I've got dogs barking now because I think my family's returning home.
Better you than me.
Yeah. Denise is right. It made me, as she was talking, it made me think about, actually it was in our last film series, our film, either the first or second, no, the first one this year. It was based on a Polish movie producer in Canada, and his family sponsored, or no, his aunt was, or his mother was a refugee, so he traveled over to Poland, Russia, where they came from, but they featured some of the Canadian policy on refugee resettlement, and it's really I think it was the origin of how resettlement started in the United States, and that was like church groups or family groups would literally sponsor a family, kind of like a international student, right? But they had basically 1 year. They had to show that there was, I don't know, $10,000 or $20,000 in a bank account to support this family, and that was just a great process. And I think we try to mimic that with our Home Again program, where organizations are creating the home, like Denise said, and and sometimes they volunteer afterwards. I'm trying to ignore it, and it's hard. I think a good approach for anybody is, if you have a skill that you think is valuable to anyone else, and we have a mentoring program for high school students, that's always a good space to do it in. I think all of us probably do like sock drives or school supplies drives and things like that. It just absolutely necessary. I mean, families can't afford to buy school supplies. I mean, it's hard enough, right, for some of us here living in the United States. So that's really helpful to be able to you know, pack a brand new backpack with pencils and paper. And I mean, this is kind of the stuff that really gets to me emotionally when you can, you know, walk into the waiting room and hand a bag of school supplies, you know, more than like the first time ever that they've received anything like that. And of course, who doesn't like to see the smile on a child's face? So school supplies is a big one. We all take donations in some fashion of used materials. So, you know, for the apartments, typically donations that are in good condition. You know, we certainly can't give someone a used bed or mattress or something like that, but you know, dining room tables and things like that that we're required to put in the house for them.
I also have a question. Thank you, Jeff. I also would like to ask Mustafa, and actually Mary as well. Mustafa, I remember watching the ESL teachers while I was doing my recordings there. But do you need, and if you do, how does one like I have friends who are just retiring now and they're looking for, you know, meaningful things to do. Can anyone come to Hope and offer to, you know, give classes helping, you know, immigrants with or refugees with ESL lessons? Or how does that work in terms of if you need interns or teachers or things like that?
Mary, you want to take that question?
Sure. So in normal times, we'll take pretty much anybody who's willing to learn to teach. So you don't have to have any teaching background. Currently, we're kind of just restarting the ESL program from a long hiatus, and doing that all virtually. So I think at the moment, we're really only utilizing a couple of volunteers who have been longtime volunteers. So like officially our volunteer program is still on hiatus, but normally, yes. I mean, we would take people and we will train them or, you know, give them an orientation. If people are, you know, nervous to be in front of a classroom of people who don't speak English and try to teach them English by themselves, then we can pair them, you know, as an assistant teacher with another person who's already been teaching, or pair two new people together so they can kind of at least have a partner going through this process. So yes, we'll take people who don't think they know what they're doing, because they'll figure it out, and we'll help them do that.
Also, just to add sort of like a yellow flag for anyone who wants to volunteer, you just have to, again, be open-minded, read and learn about refugees and immigrants, know that this work or volunteer is not going to be easy. There are going to be challenges, and you know, just try to educate yourself as much as possible on refugees and immigrants before getting into volunteering with them, because sometimes, you know, you could come in with a different mindset, and again, your intentions could be good, but if you have wrong information, I don't think you will benefit, or you will get rewarded as to really that's what you really wanted to do. So for those who want to volunteer, again, you know, just before getting into things, just, you know, try to address some of the questions that you have, you know, learn and read about refugees, and just have an open mindset about volunteering.
And would you, Mustafa, for example, if someone came and said, look, I really want to do this, but I don't know how to start, would you give them sort of an orientation session to help prepare them, and then, you know, as they would begin?
Yes. Again, we are happy to talk. Like today, you know, this is something that I'm always happy to talk about refugees, about, you know, local organizations, different organizations, differences between, you know, refugees, asylees, so there's all these different things that anyone can reach out to me at any point, not necessarily just because you want to volunteer. You just out there in the community just want to know more about refugees, can reach out to us. We're happy to talk to you, to maybe there's something that you need help with, and maybe you have some misunderstanding of something. So we are always open to any sorts of questions about refugees and immigrants.
Okay. And also, Denise, I have a question for you because International Institute did all the translations of the narratives that I recorded at Hope Refugee Center. And Jennifer was really very generous. She really made this possible. I wouldn't have had them. I wouldn't have had the translations unless you all made it possible, which I'm very grateful for. But she had also mentioned that she was using the interns, where it was an opportunity for her to work with interns, for the translators to work with interns. Is this such a thing that is needed or if someone wasn't a translator but wanted to learn through an internship, is this something that International Institute offers in terms of volunteer stuff?
We have a volunteer interpreter program. We piloted it with Lafayette High School so that the young people could get school credit for their community service hours. And then we do have a community volunteer interpreting program to ensure that the community interpreters are trained correctly. But I'm not sure if I'm understanding, is that what you're asking about?
I think so. Just that actually, I know we're getting to the end of our period, but one of the things that I would love to figure out is if viewers want to know more. I know that some of you have been putting your, but John, maybe this is a question that you could also help us to answer. If somebody wants to know about one of these things, how can we direct them in case they miss the chat room, or how can we direct them to these organizations? Or what do you suggest, Mr. Moderator?
Well, I think what I'm going to be doing, just because we are recording this event, because I think this is a phenomenal resource, and I definitely want to post it with links to the different organizations so that people can find out about more. We want to make sure that we have as much access to this information as we are able to have.
So people out there, you heard it from John. We will make this, we will make all these people accessible to you if you hopefully want to get more involved.
Maybe Eve, can you speak a little bit to how either members of the community or specifically members of Buffalo State community can get involved with the Anne Frank Project?
Sure, definitely. So every year there's a couple of ways. Every year when we do host this Social Justice Festival, which is a series of a few days to actually multiple weeks when we have our visual arts in the galleries. So we work with either local or national artists, scholars, and activists who share their tools and vocabulary for world change. So a variety of storytelling happens there. And so we take when we're face-to-face, we take a lot of volunteers because those events range from performances to installing exhibits to just crowd control. And it's an event that's free and it's open for the entire community. So community members can join. It's free for students and the community at Buffalo State campus. So everybody can participate there. And then it's really run by the volunteers. So when we're face-to-face, there's a sea of volunteers dressed in bright orange shirts with the Anne Frank Project tree on the back and Buff State logo. And at that point in time, I'm just, saying, I step back and let the volunteers run the show. And it's a really beautiful event because we create a moment of service for the greater good of exploring these stories and learning about ways that we can improve our communities. So that's the Social Justice Festival is one event, and that happens in October every year. Other ways that folks can get involved, if they're Buffalo State students, we have a phenomenal study away program to Rwanda. I know Denise had mentioned that one of her staff traveled with us a couple of years ago, and it really is a remarkable experience. So to have the opportunity to go and experience the stories and the culture in Rwanda is life-changing. Also, we do community training. We actually have a couple opportunities coming up in April. It's free and open to the community. We're doing a review of our story-based learning model, which can be used in organizations. It can be used in the classroom. It's an opportunity to learn how to build stories together, create community, and open and discuss big topics. So it's a great story structure to help a group of people move through stories they want to share and open up and learn about each other. So that's happening in April. You can find that information out on our website, annfrankproject.com, and those trainings are free. Now for educators who are out there, especially within the Buffalo Public Schools, we have a partnership with the Buffalo Public Schools. We do a lot of teacher training, and they can get in touch with us and we can talk about residency work. Along with our visits into the schools are the school tours, and that's where we actually travel to schools. So that's a way that folks can get involved with us. Really, it's, oftentimes we're coming to them, but we create those partnerships in that way when we tour our devised performances that are all about community building, conflict resolution, and identity exploration. And those are brought to K through 12 schools locally. So that's, I think it pretty much covered everything. And, if you have any questions, the other thing is we partner with different organizations when they want to engage in storytelling. When, for example, reaching out to connecting with Lisa, because she's an artist and interested in connecting with other folks within Buffalo, since we work with a variety of people, individuals, community leaders, schools, organizations with story building. We do a lot of networking in that way. So that's another way to get in touch with us.
Yeah, and it was really, Eve really just hooked me up to so many different conduits during my shelter project, and I'm really grateful to you, Eve. And, I'm hoping onwards. I also, I know we don't have much time left, but Bulo, we haven't had much time to talk with you, but you were the first person I talked to from Journey's End before I got to meet Jeff. And I know that you're newish at Journey's End, but you also have a few programs. Could you tell us a little bit about the programs that you run at Journey's End, and if there's actually any possibilities of volunteers that could work with you as well?
Yeah, sure. I know Jeff mentioned about the program that I ran when I started talking. So I run this program is Office of New American. It's granted by New York State. So pretty much what I do, I know Denise, I worked with, we also meet monthly. So we kind of just connecting new American to get to know where to go, to get to know what kind of services out there, to understand the whole process of like where these kind of resources that are needed to be settled here in Buffalo. So that's pretty much what I do. And we do that by like providing trainings. If let's say if there is I work with different organizations in Buffalo. So if you have any training, I mean, I will appreciate, I know the previous owner worked with volunteers. So if you want to work with me to this program, I think it's the best way to do it. And I will welcome people to do it. I think Jeff will be the man who can speak to that if something happens. I mean, if you have anybody to volunteer, but it's a good program too, and it's just a good way for to get yourself out, like food outside like in the community, if you want to do it. So
great, thank you very much. Also, I just wanted to remind you all to keep your eyes peeled. I'll be sending out to my mass list, but also Burchfield Penney will be letting people know when Stich Buffalo is going to be planning their workshop in April. So that date is to be announced, but it should be a really great workshop. And I just want to remind everybody about that.
Thank you so much. And I just want to say that if anybody is interested in getting involved at Stich Buffalo, just go to our website, stichbuffalo.org. Right at the top of the screen, there's a link for Get Involved. And that is a place where you can fill out a volunteer form, or find out information on donating materials that is used in our Refugee Women's Workshop and our Second Stitch program.
Thanks, Sherry. I'm going to hand it back over to John, but I just want to thank you all for giving of your time this evening. And I learned so much, and what a pleasure to have you all here tonight. And hand it over to John.
Thanks so much, Lisa. Yeah, we're coming up on the end of our time together here. Before I close things out, I wanted to just check with our panelists here to see if anyone had any closing thoughts that they wanted to share. If not, that is very much okay.
I just want to say out loud what I wrote in the comments section. Thank you, Lisa, for creating this project that is giving light to and showing, highlighting the New American experience. And thank you to John and Burchfield Penney for allowing us to have this opportunity as well to showcase all of our different programs and really, I think, show the collaboration. We really appreciate this opportunity to reach out to the public, and it's a great opportunity for us to tell people what's happening and get them involved. So on behalf of all of us, thank you so much.
Right back at you.
Yeah, truly my pleasure to have you all here. You're all doing really vital work in our community, and I honestly can't thank you enough for that. So I really sincerely appreciate you all taking the time to be here tonight and talk about this topic. And thank you so much to Lisa for providing us this wonderful vehicle to discuss these issues. I just want to say in closing to everyone, if you are able to, please come to the Burchfield Penney and check out Shelter. It's a really powerful installation. And although the photos on our website will definitely pique your interest, it really is something that has to be experienced. So I just wanted to thank everyone again for your time, and thank you to everyone at home who is tuning in and watching this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, have a wonderful night, everyone.
Good night, everybody.
Night. Bye.